Hey, welcome back to the Cellarcast, episode 40. Can you believe we're on like 40 episodes already? I have like a real this podcast is like how I keep track of time, if I'm being honest. Like I kind of split things up into like before I started the podcast versus after. It's good. It's a it's pretty useful cuz like I think episode 6 was when like the Activision thing happened. So it's like, okay, that was pre-Activision. That was a pre-Activision lawsuit world. uh, yeah, I don't know, man. We've been going for a while. I'll do something special. I was thinking about doing that live episode. I don't think the viewership is high enough for that. I don't know. I tried to do the tournament for Space War on the main channel, and like 2 people signed up. Congrats to Ariel. Yeah, you gotta have, in order to do any like community thing, it really feels like you need to have a pretty large audience, because it starts to really break down with like when you really start thinking about how many people listen or are viewers of yours, and then down to like, okay, well, how many of those people subscribe? How many of those people comment? And then, it all gets down and down and down and down to smaller and smaller groups until, well, how many people actually are going to like enter a tournament? Turns out not many. I called like at 1,000 subscribers, was it? Yeah, 1,000 subscribers. I was going to do the tournament. I'm like, that should be enough for maybe like 10 people. Nope, that was massively overestimating it. It's cool. Anyway, we didn't have any questions last time, so no comment review. It was pretty much just you guys telling me about how Dark Souls 1 Remastered is all kind of whack. And then I should probably just wait for Dark Souls 3 to go on sale. So I'm probably just gonna stick to that. Yeah, or just pirate it. Pirate the original, the Prepare to Die edition, which apparently is no longer available on Steam. That's awesome. I love it when superior versions of things are no longer available to play. Well, anyway. Yeah, so really not a whole lot to talk about in terms of that. So I think I'm just going to jump into, and there was no news this week because I wasn't paying attention to news. You know why? It's because of the title of this episode. Because that's right, guys. That's right, fellas. I attended this year's GDC. I attended this year's Game Developers Conference. Or is it Game Development Conference? What's the Developers Conference? So it's kind of funny for me because I made a video a little while back on Chris Crawford, who founded GDC out of his living room in the 90s. There's some great pictures of like him and a couple other programmer types like in his backyard. And yeah, so I guess I should explain that. It's sort of what I guess I've been hinting at. I feel like I've been hinting at it, and I didn't want to spoil it because I thought it was cool. So there is, how did I get into GDC? Well, it was not through like a regular, I didn't like buy tickets or anything. Can you do that? Can you just buy tickets or buy a pass? I actually don't even know. I saw people there who were there and they were like affiliated with their college or something, but maybe that's like a special maybe for like students? I have no idea. But so why was I there? So I was there volunteering with, I guess I'm going to shill now, the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment. So if you didn't know, the MAID, as it's called, is the world's, I'm going to go through the script now. It's the world's only fully playable video game museum, at least as far as, pretty sure, I don't know, sounds correct. Fully playable. So basically everything in their collection You can sit down and play. They have a collection of like over 14,000 games, something like that. And essentially, the way the museum works is you come in and you pay a little entry fee, and then there's just a bunch of setups of like every console ever with a ton of different games, and then you can just pick something up and play it to your heart's content. And it's really cool. They also do like community stuff. They do like coding classes for kids and all that. And it's a cool establishment. And unfortunately, so they're based in Oakland, California. And when I was growing up, we would always visit California. So I grew up in Illinois, but the rest of our family, all of our family that's in America, lives in California. We were the only ones who didn't live there. So we would go visit during the summers. We would come visit our grandparents, like in California, and I would have loved it. It's something I would have been super into as a kid because I've always been into like retro games, and we just never knew about it. And I only found out about it in, I think, around 2020, when they unfortunately had to go into storage. They basically had to close the museum temporarily. Not go out of business per se, but essentially what happened was, obviously with like COVID, it's really like pre-vaccine. It was just kind of starting up. Seems pretty obvious that like a museum where like you're always touching things and like controllers is like, the health restrictions basically like put the kaputs on it. Not literally like shut it down, I don't think, but it didn't do well. It was not good for the museum. So basically they moved everything into storage, into just a warehouse, and that's where everything is right now. And they're looking to get a new location sometime soon, hopefully. No one quite knows yet, but they do have a Kickstarter, and I'll link to it down below if you're curious. I did put money towards it when it first happened. When it first came out, because I was like, I would have loved this. I want this back so that I can go to it. And, So we still have a booth at GDC. I believe they've been at GDC every year since 2017. And basically what we did is we brought a bunch of stuff out of storage, and we had a bunch of games set up on the show floor. So there's kind of like two levels to GDC. It's at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, and basically the top level is where all the meeting rooms are, which is where all the talks happen. And the lower, like the ground level, was just kind of like, I think there were some talks over there or some meeting rooms, but it was mostly just like where they did all the check-in stuff. And then the bottom floor, or the basement, I guess, which is just a big giant cathedral underneath underneath the building. Big, basically, convention hall. And that's where all the booths and stuff were. So we had a booth, or it wasn't really a booth, it was basically like an exhibit. We had a rug that we set up all our stuff on, and it was in like the arcade play area. That's what they called us. And so we had, I want to say like 10? A little over, maybe more than 10. I'd have to recount it in my head. Setups with a bunch of different games that were picked for various reasons. A lot of them were because they tied into things at the like talks that were going on, or overall themes at the conference. So Bungie had a few talks this year, so we had Marathon running on like an original iMac, and we had Halo Reach on like a 360. What else? There was like some pretty neat AI talks this year, so we had a couple games that were kind of examples of that. So we had Chessmaster 2000 on the Amiga, which has this absurd chess AI that I don't think I saw anyone beat for all 3 days. We had Twisted Metal 2, which apparently was like something important with AI. Have to admit I'm not that familiar with Twisted Metal. And what else did we have? Oh, we had one other. Oh, we had Civ. We had Civ 1. Pretty sure that was all the ones for AI theme, the AI theme. And then beyond that, we had some general crowd pleasers. We had like Super Mario Brothers 3. We had Street Fighter 2, which I spent a lot of time on. And let's see, we had Wolfenstein on the SNES. We had some cool kind of, I guess, more historical stuff. Yeah, excuse me. You're gonna have to excuse me. I might be even more burpy than usual. I went over to Cat's on Saturday because I actually wasn't exhausted after the conference. I was feeling pretty good, actually. I wasn't really tired. So I just went over to her house. And I don't know if it's something I ate over there, but after, I woke up this morning on Sunday, and I was like, I burped, and I was like, oh, that's not a good taste. Ooh, that's not good at all. And I've got you can call me Carl Jobst, because I'm on the runs. I got the runs. Yeah, I've been having some bowel issues today. It's thankfully cleared up, but I have taken down 2 entire big ass bottles of Pedialyte, which I don't mind. I really like the taste of Pedialyte. Some people, it seems like a contentious opinion, but I actually really enjoy it. What do I have here? I have strawberry and a cherry punch. So I'm not quite done with the cherry punch. There's enough for 1 or 2 more glasses. But yeah, I've been slamming those all day to rehydrate myself. I think it's mostly worked its way out of my system, but I still got that gaseous. I'm a gas giant right now. Anyway, the fuck are they talking about? Oh yeah, so we had some more games that leaned on the historical end, we had Adventure on the Atari 2600, which I saw a few people beat. We had Q Basic, which is for DOS, which is basically just a programming thing. You can program stuff. What else did we have? There was some cool stuff like Bryce 3D, which is less of a game and more of a utility. It was this really neat thing. It was on Macintosh computers. Actually, what was it released on? We were running it on a Mac, but Bryce 3D. I guess there's still versions of it today? I'm not sure. Essentially, what it is it was... I'm actually curious about this now. Bryce 7. That looks pretty new. It was released in 1994. I guess the most recent version was for Windows 7, it looks like? So I have no idea. As late as October 2018, Bryce 7 development has halted. Okay. So I guess it's been iterated upon, but basically what Bryce is for is... it's a pretty neat little program where it's for creating landscapes. You basically have a couple tools, and you can add different types of geometry and terrain and fog and water and stuff, and a bunch of shapes. You can add 2D images and things, and then you basically set it in your wireframe mode, and then you click on render, and then it over the course of a minute or two, it would render out a pretty interesting, weird looking, kind of almost alien landscape. Pretty neat, honestly. You could make some cool... It's got a very, it's someone's aesthetic. It's got that interesting, I don't know, 90s CG, almost uncanny vibe to it, where it's it looks... It's like a landscape, right? But there's not quite enough polygons, and it's just it's a little off. It's not quite as detailed as a real landscape. It feels like it's kind of empty in a weird way. Almost like mist. It looks a lot like a mist if I had to like describe it. So it's got this kind of creepy vibe to it. I don't know if creepy is the best way to describe it, but yeah, I don't know. It is a neat aesthetic. So we had that running. What else did we have? Oh, we had a cute little indie game called Sunshine Heavy Industries. I didn't really. It was like a little puzzle game from the looks of it. Didn't really see that many people playing it, unfortunately. But that was just kind of like, oh, it was to like represent indie games. Oh, we had Diablo 2. That was another kind of crowd pleaser. Definitely pleaser. I saw there was this one lady who came up, and I don't think she said anything to anyone. She just saw Diablo 2 and she just sat down and played for like 2 hours. Like I would just keep looking over, and she was just still going at it. And then she just left. Which actually kind of brings me to what was sort of neat about our exhibit was that we had like a pretty high level of like engagement with the attendees, which was cool. Like a lot of the other booths, like you would pass by and you would you'd get an idea for what was going on and you know what they were, and then you might talk to them for a bit, maybe a minute or two, and then you'd probably just leave, maybe with a business card. But our booth, like people would come up, they had these like big, like these like cool emotional reactions, I guess. Like there was this one, like the first person, it was a Monday, it was a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday thing for me. That was when I was there. Oh, it's raining outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. So like the first person I like really had like an interaction with like, hey, I'm working this exhibit, was a young lady, and she was just kind of staring at Halo Reach. And she was like, yeah, so like, what is this? What's going on here? And I just kind of explained to her like what we are and what we do. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's Halo Reach. If you feel free, like, you know, or if you want to, like, feel free to like sit down and play, because everything was there to like play. And she like explained to me, she was like, yeah, I came from a really like religious household, and no one, they never let me, my parents never let me play anything with like magic or aliens or anything that was even slightly fantastical. So like one of the only games she ever got to play as a kid, I think like really briefly, that was like, oh my god, I'm able to play a video game, was like Halo Reach on like someone, I forget, it was like someone's Xbox. So it was something like that. So she just has these like super like magical memories of Halo Reach. And she was just looking at the title screen, and you could tell she was just like, wow. And then she just sat down and she had a ball for like 20-30 minutes. And like that was just a really cool reaction to get out of someone. I loved seeing, like, we had Civ up on a machine with like DOSBox running, and with like the original floppies kind of laid out next to it and all that, and the original box and like strategy or like manual. And you'd see like all the 50-year-old, more like 40-year-old guys like coming up and like taking pictures of it. They're like, dude, it's Civ. Dude, like they played it when they were in like middle school or high school or something, or you know, even younger maybe. What else did people have? Oh, there was this really cool, I don't know what she was. I don't know if she was like German or Russian, or I don't know. I'm bad at like telling accents. But she was sitting down playing Adventure on the 2600. And she just looked like she was just like, wah, just by herself. She was having this like crazy time playing it. Like, and you know, she looked like, oh, okay, I tried to like not just approach absolutely everyone to like throw them the script. But she looked like she might have, you know, I could have like gone up and like, you know, chatted her up. So I went up and we started talking, and then I like, you know, I explained what the deal is with us, and I'm like, yeah, anything you can play, or anything here you can like sit down and play. And she's like, yeah, so I've always heard I've always heard of this game, but I was never able to play it, and like it's really like I can't figure out what to do. And but she was like in a fun way, right? And I was like, yeah, so you can play anything that we have set up here. And she was like, oh really? And then she spent like the next hour or two, it felt like, just crawling around the whole exhibit, just like trying out like every game and thing. It was like really cool. And then like the next day she came back and she was with like one of her, I think probably coworkers or friends or something, and they were playing Street Fighter 2 and just having a blast, just balling out. And I went up to them like, oh, you're back from yesterday. And they were like, she was like, yeah, this is awesome. It was just really nice and like fun. What else? What else? Oh, Kat's texting me right now. The Oscars are happening, and Will Smith just punched Chris Rock over a pretty benign joke that I think Smith was just really sensitive about. I don't know. It was really hard to watch. It was really embarrassing. Anyway, yeah, what's up? I got off my train of thought. Yeah, it was just really fun to like see stuff, and I ended up playing a lot of Street Fighter 2. That game holds up. That's a fun game. Like obviously, like from a competitive aspect, you can look at it and be like, oh, this game it's so unbalanced and wacky, and it's like, people call it like Kusoge, and like they're not terribly wrong. It's got kind of a Kusoge element to it. But like, damn, it's like really fun to just like go in, especially because I don't really know anything. I just kind of have a basic kind of, I guess, fundamental knowledge of how to play fighting games. So like, I don't know anything particularly about Street Fighter 2 besides a couple little tidbits, like one of us would get stunned after getting hit like twice, and I'd be like, yeah, so stun's kind of like random in this game. The way stun works in Street Fighter 2 is that there's like an invisible stun bar, essentially, and once it fills up, you get stunned. And every move has like a set amount of stun that it deals, but then there's like a random value added on top of that. There's a ton of just random stuff in Street Fighter 2. Ugh. Ugh. Pardon me. Yeah, there's just a bunch of random stuff. That tastes like sulfur. No, but that game is really fun to just jump in, especially if like neither of you really know what you're doing. And I ended up like actually talking to some people who like knew some stuff about fighting games, and like I never get to talk to people like other fighting game people, essentially, which was really nice. And honestly, in general, just the environment of people who were just also really into games. One thing, I don't think I've ever really mentioned this, but when I was growing up, no one like at my school like played video games. Like no one, like none of the boys really did. It was like really, like in retrospect, it's like we knew what Pokemon, we knew like everyone knew like the general, like I guess the stuff that you just could not avoid by like osmosis, like Mario and Pokemon and maybe, I don't know, Call of Duty or something like that, but no one really played video games. It was like if I was talking to, and I went to a pretty small school, and I was in a class of about 30 people, and it didn't really budge from that number for most of my, like, a few people, one or two people would join the class every year, but didn't really budge. And like if I was talking to like one of the other boys in my class, if I said like Zelda, they probably wouldn't have known what I was talking about. It was like that level of like, I'm the only one who knows about like any of this shit. And that's kind of been it's been a lot of my life. Honestly, it's like, I'm the only one who knows about any of this shit, not just like video games. it got a little better, like, once I got to high school. Uh, but yeah, that was like all the stuff I was into was stuff that nobody really liked or was into as well. Uh, and I didn't have many friends until like into middle school. It was like a K through 8, so it was like the same group of people the whole time, which I don't know if that helped or hindered it. But until like middle school, I didn't like really find friends I could like share interests with. So yeah, I've just gone like a lot of my life kind of just explaining things to people. Like I have friends now and like stuff like that. Like that I can. The nice thing is like they don't know what I'm talking about, but they'll listen to me explain it. But it was nice to be in an environment where I didn't have to explain stuff. Honestly, that's like a lot of things. That's like a nice. It was the same feeling I have going to like anime conventions. It's like there's kind of like a comfort in knowing that you're in like a space where you don't have to explain yourself. It's kind of like a very specific thing that's cool about conventions. It's not like a physical thing, right? It's not really an activity. It's just like, oh, I could probably strike up a conversation with anyone I see, and we would have some kind of common ground, and we wouldn't have to spend 20 minutes explaining this thing to have a conversation about it. Like maybe a little bit, like I talked to people who weren't really, or we kind of explained games we were into to each other, but it was like from a much more like even footing, I guess. I don't know. It's very nice because I have this thing. I guess it's weird. I would generally describe myself as an introvert, but like I have introvertive like tendencies. Like I just kind of stay in my room all the time, and if I'm around a lot of people, my energy level drops. I usually think of myself as just like an introvert who isn't very shy. And so like usually when I'm in an area where there's a lot of people, my energy level just drops. And in the worst case, like the one time I went to Disneyland, with my high school band, that ends up in like a really, really bad mental place where I'm just like horribly, horribly depressed. But in the case of like when I'm at an anime convention or GDC, for instance, like this past week, there's enough, like, yeah, my energy level kind of drops, but there's enough stuff that like interests me and engages me and kind of like stimulates my brain that I'm just kind of calm. It's not like low energy sad, it's just low energy calm. So like I'm very calm inside, and I just get to kind of walk around. One of my favorite things to do at conventions is just there's usually a point where I just split off from my friends because they're going one place and I'm like, oh, I'll meet you up later, and then I just kind of walk through the artist alley or something like that, and I just look at stuff and just kind of have some time to myself. And even though there's people everywhere all around me, it's still like I feel very like at ease. It's a very nice part of the experience for me, and it's something I missed, honestly. There's a lot of things that I've missed. I haven't done public speaking in forever, and that's part of like why this was fun, because I just got to talk to people and kind of do, I don't know, a little bit of a performance, I guess. I love performing for people on stage. Performing might not be the best word. It's more just like, I don't know, I like communicating things to people, and I guess like public speaking and that kind of thing is like a really cathartic way for me to do that. I love talking in front of crowds. I really love it. It isn't like public speaking like it's like one of the biggest phobias that people have. I love it. I love public speaking. And unironically, like I feel like invigorated when I do it. And so that's why it was just, I don't know, it was nice to just like converse with people. That was so nice. It was something I've kind of, I don't know, I've been missing. There's like 2 people I talk to. Maybe 3, like regularly. I guess 4 if you count therapy. It's like my best friend, my girlfriend, my dad, and my therapist are like the 4 people I talk to. With any kind of regularity. So it's like, I don't know, it was really neat to just be in that kind of an environment. I feel like I was going somewhere, then I got really sidetracked. Yeah, I don't know, it was great to like see that emotional connection that people had with the games that we had. And let's see, wait, where are my notes? Because there was, it was 3 days, and I basically spent the whole day there all 3 days. So that was like 9:15ish to like 6, a little past. I want to talk about some stuff. So yeah, I've mainly been talking about the things that I were like at the exhibit. Pardon me. The sulfur taste has gotten much less intense, so I think it's mostly gone. Let me talk about some stuff at the rest of the expo hall. So I was able to take some breaks. It wasn't like I wasn't like slaving away. Like it was pretty much all by choice. Like they were really cool about it. They were like, yeah, if you want to take a break, just ask, just let us know. There's usually gonna be, unless there's like literally no one else there. We should always have someone like, manning the exhibits. But in a lot of cases, it kind of ran itself. So they were like, yeah, if you want to go take a break, just let us know. So around like noon-ish, I was like, hey, I'm going to go walk around and like see stuff. And there's some cool sections at GDC. So one that they recommended to me, the maidens... was the alt control section. So alt control is basically a section of the floor where it's specifically for games that have unconventional or alternative controllers or like input methods. So for instance, the first game that I tried, or one of the first games that I tried, it was called Morse, I think. And it's basically a Battleship game. Yeah, it's basically like Battleship, like the board game, except you play it using a Morse code input. So like literally like the box with the little thing you click, and then so yeah, that was it. And then they had the like a reference sheet for Morse code taped to it. So essentially, like the way that it worked was you had like, it started off like slow and simple, and it's like one row of squares, and each square is it has like a letter underneath it, and then ships pass through they pass by from like one direction to the other, and you have to shoot down the ships, and you do that by locking onto one of the squares. And you lock onto the squares by putting in the corresponding letter in Morse code. So you'd be like, oh, R, and then you look at the reference sheet, and then I would like tap in the thing for R, and then it would lock in, and then there was another button that they had on the box to shoot missiles, and there's like different types of missiles. There's like a big one, there's like the regular one, there's like a big one, there's one that hits like 3 squares to the right, like in a row, in a line. And then I think I played about 3 levels of it. And by the 3rd level, they stepped up the difficulty with every level kind of, I think like level 2 introduced like more ships. Level 3 introduced multiple rows. So what you would do is you would basically switch the left and right squares. How do I describe this? It's really simple. So like the bottom on the bottom you have like the list of letters, and then on the left side, going up and down, you have numbers. So the numbers are how you switch up and down, and the letters are how you switch left and right. So it's like, oh, this ship is passing on like 2B, and then you have to like click like the number for 2, and then the number the Morse code for 2, and then the Morse code for B. And it was really neat. I'm sure that it gets a lot more intense later on, but it was really cool. Let's see, there was another. Yeah, so one of the coolest ones that I played, it was called Teletext something. Teletext something. So I learned a little bit about this. So teletext was a... Let me get it actually specifically, because I looked up the definition for it. I want to get this right. Teletext, or broadcast teletext, is a standard for displaying text and rudimentary graphics on suitably equipped television sets. It was basically this thing in Europe that was kind of like you would have a button on your remote, like there was a teletext button, and then you would switch to the teletext, and there would be teletext channels. And it was sort of like the internet, like a really early kind of internet that worked through your television. So if you look up just screenshots of it, it would be like, so, okay, so the BBC, they had their CFAX. That was like their channel, or like their teletext service. And so it would be like news headlines, channel 101, news in detail, 102 through 119. And then you go down to like another one, sports headlines, 140. And then you would, type in, if you wanted to say sports headlines, you would type in 140. So basically, teletext, this game that I played, teletext something. I can't remember the second word in it, or the rest of the title. It was essentially like, the idea was that you played it on a television using a TV remote, using a clicker. And then you would input the channels for the teletext when you were basically like prompted to from like each screen. It worked in a way, basically it was kind of like there was like this sort of mystery. The idea, I talked to some of the developers, and they said the idea was kind of like you're up late one night or something, or it's kind of capturing the feeling of like you're up late one night and you find this weird teletext channel that you're not familiar with, and there's this like mystery that you kind of like unravel as you go through the different channels and like figure out what's going on. I didn't get to the mystery, but I was pretty intrigued by like what I played. I actually had to like put it down because I wanted to see other things, and I could tell that I was getting kind of sucked into it. So what was the rest? I'm trying to... Yeah, so for instance, it kind of worked in a way that was like a choose your own adventure book, where it'll be like, flip to this page to make this choice, or flip to this page to make the other choice. Except it was doing that with little teletext channels. So for instance, it would be like, you go to the travel channel, right? You get like news, travel, chat, and like something else. I forget exactly what. And I went to like the travel channel first, and then it showed me. It gives me like a travel ad essentially for this mountain in Switzerland or Germany. It was kind of funny. So it was made by these Swiss guys, and I found out because I was like, there was a mountain. It was called like, wait, if I look it up, what was it? Unterrottenbach? I think that's what it is. Unterrottenbach? I'm pretty sure. I might be getting that wrong. It was like Unterroll something. Unterrothorn? Thorn? Oh, it's probably Unterrothorn. How is that? How is T Unterhausen? I forgot. I don't know exactly how to pronounce the TH. Anyway, so I was like, how do you pronounce that? And then he pronounced it for me, and then I pronounced it back pretty much the exact same. And he was like, oh, that's a really good pronunciation. Because I said like, sorry, I'm like American. I can't pronounce that. And I'm like, oh, what language is that? And he goes, oh, it's German. I was like, oh, my mom's German. I'm like half German, so I kind of have an idea of how to pronounce it. And it turns out they were Swiss, so it's a mountain in Switzerland, Unterhausen. I don't know if I'm hitting that TH correctly. And so it was like a travel guide, like, oh, come to this mountain, and then you would basically, and then it's like it describes through text like a first-person view of skiing down these mountains. And you actually get to make a choice by inputting different channels and stuff like that, like speed up or slow down, make a turn at this pass, or keep going ahead. And it was cool. And then I went to like the chat channel, and there's like two chat. There's like the general chat and the flirty chat. And I went to like the general chat, and there's a couple different like threads essentially that you can respond to. And one of them is like basically someone putting out like a dating profile, and you like I responded to that one, and they said, oh, meet me in the flirty chat. So I go over to the flirty chat, and there's like some more options for like places that you can go, and I was like, okay, I need to get up now because I'm getting too into this. I want to see other stuff. But so I ended up talking to them, and I was like, yeah, so this is like really cool. Do you guys like sell this, or like what's the deal? Like what is it? Because you play it with a TV remote. And it very specifically works like with televisions. I actually learned later, because apparently some people, they were reached out to the maid, in fact, because I think it was something like they didn't know like if they could get like a European television at the conference, because it only works with European televisions or PAL televisions. Apparently, when you would try to use like a European remote with like the teletext button, if you tried to use teletext on like a North American or a non-European TV, it like registered as like closed captioning. It was just like, I don't know, it's the way that it's programmed. I don't quite understand how it works, but basically it didn't work. It doesn't work on non-European TVs. So they were like trying to see if they could find one for them. Didn't end up working, but hey, apparently they got one anyway. And so I basically said like, hey, so like how, like, do you guys sell this or what? And they said, oh, it's a student project. And I was like, that's a perfect student project, because it's a really cool idea, it's a really cool game, and the experience of playing it with a remote is pretty neat. Especially, I'm sure, like, if you were European and you grew up with teletext in some form, it probably has a little more appeal to you. Like, I, as an American, probably don't, like, fully, it doesn't, like, click with me. It was this thing, I learned about it from their game. So, like, yeah, it's cool, but, like, you can't, like, you could port it to pretty easily, I'd assume, at least, you could probably pretty easily port it over to, pardon me, to something like, you know, at least PC. Just use, like, a number pad, you know, to put in the channel numbers and all, because it's literally just, you know, numbers that you're inputting, at least as far as I got. But you would lose a little bit of that magic, you know, that cool experience. Honestly, I wish they did, just because like, it would be, I think it's cool, and I think people would really like it. It was a neat old game. Let's see, there were some other neat alt control games. There was one that you played by, the idea, it was based on Plinko. it was called like Burger Plinko or something, or Fast Food Plinko. Plinko, if anyone doesn't know, it's like that game show where they have it's like a board. It's like a board standing up, and there's a bunch of pegs sticking out of the board, and then they like drop a ball, and then it kind of like falls through the pegs, and it falls into like one of however many little slots at the bottom, and then like you win a thing, or I don't know. I never really watched it. It's Plinketto. If you watch Red Letter Media, that's their spin on it, the Plinketto board. So it was essentially that, but with like fast food order, like menu or like ingredients. And it was played with, so the idea was that you had like a little headset that's like one you would be wearing at like a fast food like drive-through, and then you would speak into the headset for the ingredients that you wanted. And then the game, like, you would hold, it was like a ketchup and mustard, like, squeeze bottle. And they had little sensors in them. And the ingredients would fall down as you called them. They would fall down the board through the little pegs. And then you had a little paddle, kind of at the bottom. Excuse me. And the paddle had, like, a ketchup and mustard on either end, and then you would Jesus, you would like squeeze one of them, and it would like shoot out on screen and like almost like a rocket, like a jet propulsion, and it would like launch the paddle in the opposite direction. And you would try to, as they would fall down, there was like a specific space in the middle that you had to get the ingredients to fall into, and on the sides it would like go into the trash. So you would have to like, as they fall down, you would try to like you would squeeze the balls, try and push the paddle to knock them into the middle. And putting on that headset, I think all the main like functions of the game were like done with voice commands. And honestly, it was pretty spot on. Like it got me pretty accurate. Putting on that headset was a pain in the butt because of my big long hair. My big, long, thick hair. It's really difficult to move out of the way because it wasn't a particularly large headset. It was like a dinky little thing. Yeah. Oh, when it detects like a swear word, it would play confetti. That was pretty funny. That was neat. There was a cute little game by I think some French people. It was like this French couple. And there was like this big, I don't know what it's called. It's like a thing. It's on the idea is that you're on a rail, like a railroad, and you're in one of those carts that's like propelled by moving like a lever thing. It's like a lever on an axle with like two handles on either side, on like either end, and it's both people like they basically like seesaw the lever up and down, and that like propels it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that's called. But so they literally had like a big model of this thing that you would like play on. It was like made out of cardboard and like PVC pipes, like painted up and all that. And there were screens on both sides, so the players would stand facing each other and each like take a side of the handles, or each take a side of the lever, and they would be facing each other, and they would have to communicate what they saw on the other screen. So like you would both have a view, and then the other player had to do something depending on like what the player opposite on the other okay, so let me just give you an example. So like I'm pushing the thing up and down, right? We're seesawing it back and forth, and on the screen that I can see, there's like a cowboy showing up on there's like a little animation of like going down the tracks, and there's like a cowboy that's behind. I played it with like one of the devs, and I'm like, oh, I would have to tell him like, oh, there's like an outlaw or like a criminal or something like that. And that's what they called it. And then he would have to duck, and there was some kind of like sensor, and then the like bandit would like shoot, and then it would miss if he ducked, right? And then he would have to communicate to me like, oh, there's a bend in the tracks. You have to pull this lever on the side to like change the tracks essentially. And then I would pick up a little lasso and I would throw it around this thing. It was a really active game. Really shouldn't have played it while my legs were already tired from being up on my feet all day, because man, they were very tired afterwards. But it was cool. It was a cute little game. It was called what was it called? It was called like Two something. It had two in the, like, two is enough, or big enough for two of us? I don't know what it was like. It was something like that. Yeah, it was cute. Maybe this little French couple. Yeah. Those were all the alt control games that I played that kind of like caught my interest. There was a big thing for the IGDA, the Indie Game Developer Awards or something like that. So there was a big spot on the floor with a bunch of indie games, and there was stuff like probably the one most people would have heard of was like it had in Inscription, it had Cruelty Squad, it had, I think I'd heard of Neurocracy. I think that's what it was called. And then a bunch of other indie games that I hadn't heard of but were pretty neat. There was a game called Kooky. It's spelled Cucchi with an exclamation mark afterwards. And it's based on... It's an Italian game, and it's based on the work of the Italian painter Enzo Cucchi. And the idea is basically that it's a first-person game, and you're inside one of his paintings. Every level is like inside of a different painting. And it was really neat. It's basically like there's, at least the two levels that I saw, there's no floor. There's no real like ground. It's like the first level, it's just kind of like a single colored sort of like void that you're in. So like the first level is just, it's all white. And then there's little pieces of scenery from his paintings that you would have to basically use to like orient yourself. And honestly, I never felt like disoriented, personally. There was always like enough where I could tell like approximate distance and all that. And it's also not like a particularly fast game. Like, I feel like motion sickness wouldn't really factor in here. Kind of reminded me a bit of the Unfinished Swan. If anyone remembers that game, pretty neat little game. And if you look up Enzo Cucchi, his name is Cucchi, Enzo, Enzo. He has these very like abstract, weird paintings that are like, I'm looking at one. It's like this very simple. There's something very like interesting about his work. Like it's very, oftentimes like not super detailed, just a lot of like color and some detail, but the scapes that he paints are very like, I don't know, they feel almost like slivers out of something. Just looking at them, they feel like slivers that have been cut out of something else. They're very interesting. Sometimes a little like, I don't know, disturbing, you might say? I'm not sure. But very like interesting abstract people and landscapes. Oh, there's one I see here with, it's a bunch of buildings with like eyes all over. It's like a bunch of buildings and there's just eyes dotted all over the painting. Like they're floating almost. And the eyes are actually like a collectible in the game. So that's neat. It had this really cool trance soundtrack of just like music you just kind of listen to. I played it with headphones on, and it just kind of like, I don't know, I was just really enjoying just kind of being in his paintings, sort of. And and just kind of wandering around and looking at stuff and finding little things, and just kind of getting into it, and almost in like a very zen game. Honestly, I feel like it would probably work really cool as like a VR game, especially because you could listen to it with headphone. You could use like the headphones, and it wouldn't be like a problem for like spatial things because you could just play it in like a chair. But yeah, it was really neat, and I think that like one of the developers, I think he got a little nervous because I was just kind of like wandering around, and on my end, I was totally happy doing that. I was getting into it. I just, again, just enjoying the experience. But he comes, I think he thought I was lost, and he was like, you can get to the level 2 by going over the sea. And I was like, oh, all right. And then he was kind of like guiding me, like, no, you have to go there. Like, I was like, no, I was perfectly fine. Just just kind of like being in the game and just kind of soaking it in. Yeah, really cool game. There was a game called Memory Card that I played a bit of. It's definitely like it feels like a really personal game. I couldn't get a handle on it. It's just kind of like walking around in these really bizarre, low poly environments and reading things. And I think the idea is that you're going through like the mind and memories of like a person, like an artist guy, maybe the creator. I have no idea. And you're seeing like, I don't know. It's almost like the weird. Yeah, pardon me. Like almost like dream-like sort of like interpretation of their memories. It was very interesting. Kind of a walking simulator, but not bad. Not in like I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It was interesting. Let's see. Did I play anything else? I'm trying to remember. Those were the main ones. I did play a bit of Cruelty Squad. I have to admit, I haven't really seen that much about Cruelty Squad, so I had no idea how to play it. I like how ugly it is. I think that's really funny. Just look up Cruelty Squad. It's true cyberpunk. It's not cool cyberpunk. It's real cyberpunk. Everything is fucking ugly. It seemed cool. Someone like explained it to me better later, like what the kind of gameplay is, and I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of more like a stealth, like assassination game. Then I was just going around shooting people. What else? Oh yeah, I played some other games by some really nice Swiss guys. There's a Swiss. Oh, I forget what it's called. Consulate? Yeah, I think it's the Swiss consulate in San Francisco, which is apparently like they've been there for a little while, and one of their like current things was like they wanted to make a big push, like they had to get their games. One of their like stipulations for something was that they had to get like a deal that like they would have money to publish games. I guess Switzerland is doing like a push for video games. I don't know. But there was a whole section dedicated to, it was called Swiss Games. All one word, so like a brand name. And I didn't play, there was only one game I think I played. Unless I'm forgetting another one. Sorry if I am. It was called, oh, let me pull this out. It was called Hermit, an underwater tale by Early Coffee Games. And it's coming out on Steam sometime soon. They're oh no, there's a typo on the business card. It says it's supposed to say wish list on Steam, but it says whis list on Steam. They put the H on the wrong place. Oh, it's fine. Yeah, it was a cute little game about hermit crabs. Basically, the idea is it has a really nice pixel art aesthetic. It's kind of like it's pixel art, but it has almost like a painted look to it. And I actually got to play it with the guy who did the graphics, so that was fun. And the basic premise is that you are a little hermit crab, and you're on like a stage, and you're trying to knock out bigger regular crabs who are trying to attack you. And you do that by crawling into different shells and different items that serve as shells. And each shell has like a different ability. So there's like a basic shell that gives you a little dash attack that can be used like 3 times. There's a shell that's like, it's more of like a conch. Like it's got like the pointed end, and you actually fire that off of your back, and it like shoots up into the air and lands behind you, and it's like a little missile. There was one that like you'd lay it down as a trap. There was like a bullet casing, and the bullet casing would actually fire your character out, your little sea slug, as the projectile. It was really cool, and you could like hide in the shell to like guard. You could jump around. And it was like kind of round based, and there's a boss at the end. And it was funny because like he was talking to me, and he was like, okay, so now we're actually soft locked because we ran out of shells, and there's no way to deal enough damage to the boss. There's no way to deal damage to the boss now. So we have to figure out a solution to that. But yeah, that's basically what the game is. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's a really cute little game. They gave me a sticker and their business card. And the sticker and the backside of the business card, it's the same little piece of art. It's really cute. It's like a glass bottle. It's like a painted little thing of like, it's like a glass bottle with the sea slug inside, like the main character, the little orange sea slug. And he's taking a little nap. He's got some Z's coming out. And it's really cute. So shout out to those guys. I'll try and link them. I should go over. I got so many business cards. Dude, you know what happened? You know what sucks? There were so many people. Not so many people. I was asked twice over the weekend. Sorry, over the week. If someone could add me on LinkedIn. And I was like, is this what being a professional means? I do have a LinkedIn. I only made it partially because I was like applying to stuff after I graduated. I was trying to like apply to like newspapers, like local newspapers. Never got back to me, of course. And I had to make one because I was trying... It's a long story. I was trying to contact this guy so I could get information on some other guy who like fucked cars. It's a thing. I was experimenting with stuff after I graduated, before I started the Cellar. Okay. I literally have not updated it to include any of the stuff I've done since I graduated. It basically just has credits of like, I worked on my high school newspaper because I was just using it to like apply to writing gigs. And I'm like, I worked on my high school newspaper. I was in the jazz band. I'm an Eagle Scout, guys. No one ever got back to me. Didn't mean shit. So I haven't updated it at all with anything from the Cellar because I don't know, like I'm self-employed. Why do I need? I don't even talk to people. It like in like the area that I'm in, all the networking is over like Twitter or something. So I would usually just give people my YouTube channel if they asked. I did do a little networking through that, so that was neat. You know, I talked to some other guys who do content around like retro games, and I was like, that's cool. What's his? He does. He does. I subscribe to him. I have to double check. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I think it's just because I'm like thinking about it that I can't remember it. I'd have to double check on Twitter. I'll get back to it. Yeah, so, Andy from, let's see, he's at Love Retro BT. That's what it was called. BTW. It was like Games BTW. Wait, Games BTW podcast? Was that what it was? Cafe BTW. That's what it is. He does like a podcast on Twitch, and then he uploads the VODs onto YouTube. That's what it was. So, yeah, we did some chatting. We were like, hey, we like games. We like retro games. So that's cool. That was cool. I got a lot of business cards. I should just go through these. Let's see. Oh, there was kind of an interesting game. It was like Hotline Miami, but monochrome is the best way I can describe it. It was called The Lost and the Wicked. And it caught my attention because it's the first and only game I've ever seen that has a tie-in weed strain. They have their own weed? And I was like, well, that's interesting enough for me to, like, stop and look at the gameplay. Oh, fuck. Cat's texting me about the Oscars. Babe, I'm recording. I can't handle this right now. She's saying she loves Anya Taylor-Joy. She's saying apparently Anya Taylor-Joy's boyfriend is a white guy with long hair, so it's, babe, it's us. Ah, it's us. Of course, everyone just fucking it's any white guy with long hair. Come fuck. It's it. I don't. Anyway. Lost in the Wicked, interesting. In collaboration with North Country Farms, we created the world's first video game branded weed based off of our game The Lost and the Wicked. It's a brutal twin-stick psycho thriller. I don't know, it looked neat. Next was, what were these guys called? I have to actually scan this. They just have their logo. It was that nice lady who was really into adventure. What are you going to talk about, babe? GDC. What else? I didn't do anything else this week. I didn't pay attention to any news or anything. Let me double check that. Do Androids not have... Wait, do I have to go to Google Lens? I'm finding this out live on camera. Oh, no, yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. FireballRPG.com. They do, oh, did I mention it? They basically, they do an app. That was her company. That nice lady. They do, like, what is it? They do, like, a thing so that you can play Dungeons and Dragons remotely. It's a chat and dice roll. It gets cut off. Yeah, so the fantasy tabletop role-playing on mobile. So it's basically just, like, a little, essentially like a little keep. What am I talking about? Like record keeper for your Dungeons and Dragons games if you're playing them offline. So yeah, check that out. Fireball RPG. What else did I get? Oh, a guy gave me his business card. He's a composer. I played Street Fighter 2 with him. Fuck it, you get a shout out too. Jon Dare at jondaremusic.com and uncannytracks.com. He's a composer. That was cool. Who else? Oh, there was a guy who gave me his business card and I freaking lost it. We talked for like 2 hours on the last day. I can't believe I lost his card. Was his name Rue? I don't remember. Was it? I can't remember. He was really nice. He was really cool. We talked about Horizon Zero Dawn and narrative design. And he's like finishing up. He was like wrapping up his PhD, and in medievalism, he's an expert on Vikings. And part of his dissertation, like the last chapter, he's writing it on. So he's writing it. The topic was like Vikings as they're depicted throughout like culture over time or something like that. And like the last chapter was dedicated to like modern interpretations of Viking culture. And you had like a big section apparently on like Horizon Zero Dawn, because I didn't know this, but apparently there's like a group in that game's story that's like really heavily based on Vikings, and he's playing like Forbidden West, and Jesus, I'm spewing, dude. Her Forbidden West just came out, and there's like a character who gets introduced who apparently, in his words, was like, oh, I have to like, this is apparently like really important. I don't know if they were like a specific like historical analog or something like that, but he was like, oh, now I have to finish this game because before I complete my dissertation, because I have to know what happens to him, because I don't know, I guess it's based off of something from like Viking culture. So he was like describing the struggle to me, because he's like a completionist, and he had to make like a no side quests rule that pained him to be able to finish the game for his dissertation. Anyway, he was really cool. He gave me his business card, and he's like going into a game like narrative design, which is, if no one knows, it's neat. It's actually something that I might be interested in as like a path. Which is it's basically the narrative designer is the person who helps. They work with the like game like level designers and programmers and the writers or the story team, and they're the in-between where they figure out how to implement the story into the gameplay. And every game, we were kind of talking about that and like how game stories get written, and some games they write their script before they even begin developing anything else, and other games it's like they kind of do it as they go along. Some games don't really have scripts or like hard storylines. So it's like different for every project. Anyway, he was really cool. I gave him my YouTube channel, so hey dog, if you're listening, leave a comment. Leave a comment, and I don't know. So if anyone in the industry is listening, get this Nintendo, hire this man. That was all the business cards I got. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Oh yeah, there was a large presence this year of crypto / NFT / blockchain, and it was like kind of uncomfortable. So like no one likes this, right? This is the okay. So where do I begin? So there were kind of like two ends of the expo floor. There was like the north end and the south end. The north end was mostly like tech / like, I want to say it was like half like technology solutions / like tech stuff, and half blockchain tech solutions. So there was stuff, there was like, oh, it was like there were two different booths of like guys who had hand sensors, and that was kind of neat. Unfortunately, there was not a hands-on element to it, so it was just like, the guys running it, demonstrating it on themselves, and I would have literally just done it to make a jerk-off motion. Up front, 100%. I checked with both of them. Neither of them were willing to give anyone else the hand thing. So yeah, that was kind of neat to just check out and talk to those guys. And then there was like, stuff for like, oh, server solutions, better server tech stuff. Hang on, I'm slamming some Pedialyte down right now. I was wrong. There was only enough for one glass. So in one day I consumed how much is this? 30, let's round it up. 34 fluid ounces times 2 is 68. I consumed 68 fluid ounces of Pedialyte. How much is that in like gallons? Hang on. 68 68 fluid ounces. 2 liters. That's 2 liters or half a gallon of water. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so, what the fuck was it? Yeah, and then there was like blockchain stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it's next to like, the GPUs. So I'm like, are they in cahoots? Dude, Pedialyte tastes good. I don't know what people who hate on it are talking about. It's delicious, dude. And then, like, our end, the south end, which is where we are, it was, I want to say, like, 50% games and, like, 50% blockchain games, or block shits, as I call them. And it was really just, it was weird. It was a grimy feeling. There was a guy wearing a shirt, like, in the booth, like, right, like, next to us, essentially. There was like a crypto booth or something, and there was a guy wearing a shirt that said, the front said, Bitcoin is the future, and the back of it said, Jesus loves Bitcoin. I don't know what that guy's deal was, but of course it brought to mind like the passage from the Gospels where Jesus holds up the coin and he says, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's and give to God's what is God's. Just imagine like him holding up a Bitcoin, being like, give to give to Elon, give to Musk what is Musk's. No, hold up the Dogecoin because it has the Doge on it, right? That was the thing with Caesar because it had Caesar's face on it. So he says like, "I'll give to Doge what his Doge is, and give to God what is God's." Yeah, it was weird. I remember, so like, I took a bit of a break towards like the far end of the south, like the south side of the expo floor, which was kind of like a big cafeteria area with a bunch of tables set up. And from where I was sitting, I was basically looking at a booth for, they're called like wax.com or something like that. And they were promoting, like, they had a little TV behind them with a reel, like an ad reel playing for like this new game that they were pushing. It was called Blockchain Brawlers. It was like a wrestling themed blockchain game where you would get like different wrestlers who all had the same body type with different features. Sounds a lot like, those just AI generated like Bored Apes and that shit. And there was like maybe 2 screenshots of the game, not even gameplay, just like all the different randomly generated characters. There's like 2 screenshots of that, and then the rest of the reel was just about how many daily transactions they get on their, like, what is it called, an exchange? I don't know, on their thing compared to their competitors. And I was looking at this, and then, it just feels grimy. The thing is that, like, all this blockchain, NFT, crypto stuff in games, it doesn't do anything for the consumer. It does something for a select few consumers who happen to get lucky or are just like, economic sharks. But like for the vast majority of people, it's just like another stock market. It's just like another place to gamble, risk, reward. But unlike the stock market, at least right now, it's like based on like a speculative thing. Like product, I don't know like what you would describe, NFTs as. It doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't even really do anything for publishers, right? Like trying to sell it to publishers, like it doesn't do that much. It really doesn't do anything for the customer, except add in all this weird shit that like they don't really care about. Like a lot of people don't really care about this investing in the stock market. That's just the thing. Like, yeah, some people do, but I talked to like a lot of pardon me. I talked to some people who do like work in the industry, right? I can't oh, it's lingering in front of me. I can't, say that I've polled every single person who works in the games industry, because that would be impossible. But I talked to like a fair number of people around, from all different, from big publishers, to indie devs. And while we were chatting, the NFT thing came up somewhat frequently. Like, it's just kind of like a thing that you would note. Like, there's a lot of blockchain stuff this year. Because this is the first year it's there. GDC's been online like the last 2 years. So this is the first year, and NFTs and that stuff hasn't really been a thing until like 2021. So, it's like the first year it's here, and it's like, man, for the first year, this is a lot. This is a lot. And there's a lot of talks devoted to it. And all of them were sponsored. Every single talk on blockchain was sponsored. And I ended up like, I talked to these people, and not the people who ran, like, who were coming here with their blockchain stuff, but, just developers and people in the industry, people in all sorts of different roles. And I guess what's somewhat comforting that I can impart to you, the listener, is that no one likes this. No one is into it. This is like very much an outside thing that's like trying to worm its way into gaming for a select few people to make a lot of money. No one who's actually into gaming, who cares at all about the industry, really cares about it. Or sorry, not cares, really likes it. Most of them openly dislike it, actually, because a lot of them actually understand it. The funny thing with this stuff is that like most people, if you take it back to something like, I imagine, in previous years, the big hype, like tech bro type of thing was probably like VR. There's like, there's like a type of person who's like really into VR, right? And then most of the general public thinks it's like kind of neat, or they're sort of indifferent to it. It's kind of, and there's maybe a few people who don't like it, or they think it's weird. But for the most part, it's like, okay, there's like an even spread. Like, I can see VR will be a thing in the future. There's an even enough spread. It's just, there's got to be content that people are interested in. There's got to be experiences people are actually willing to have, like that aren't just like and excited about the technology. Like, people get surprised when I talk about, like, I say that I don't really care about VR, because the funny thing is, like, I don't really care about technology, which is something I've come to realize. I just kind of care about games, and most VR games seem a little gimmicky. It still feels like a gimmick to me, right? But I'm in like, yeah, I can foresee it being something really cool in the future. With NFTs, you have like a small subset of people who are really into it, and it's a very particular kind of person too. And you probably know who I'm talking about. There's like a small subset of people who are really like diehard about it. And then the general public, it's either people who just don't understand what it is, or people who understand what it is and don't like it. And like, it's not good. And now, mind you, I think that the blockchain technology is actually quite cool. I think it's actually something that has merit to it. But it's the NFTs as an idea are not what I think the future application of that is. 'Cause the basic strength of blockchain is that it's basically like an authentication network that can't be spoofed. It can be hacked, but it can't be spoofed because everyone checks everyone else, basically. Ugh. And so, like, the most interesting application I've heard of it is, like, concert tickets. To make sure people aren't faking concert tickets or to make sure people aren't scalping them. Probably, I think. The concert ticket is confirmed via an NFT. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's actually, like, kind of a useful thing for, like, security. Because it's something you can't fake. It's something, like, you could probably set up ways that you can't, like, exploit it through scalping. I'm not entirely sure. But I watched this video the other day. It's one of those big channels that do videos on, like, things, like, I don't know, it's like an educational channel, I forget why, but it was basically on, like, why drone deliveries never really took off. Took off. And basically, I mean, there's a couple of reasons for it, you know, actually getting the package on the ground was a hassle. There aren't that many areas that are actually suitable for drone delivery. There's things like air traffic. There's things like weather. There's legal issues around, like, where you can actually fly drones. Like, you can't fly them around, like, places, like, within a certain radius of, like, different airports. So that actually takes out a lot of metropolitan areas. Anyway, so they describe this thing called, it was like someone's hype cycle. Like, I don't know, some researcher, they did like a paper on hype cycles for products or technology. And they came up with basically a literal hype cycle, like a graph. And the way that it works is that there's this new technology that early adopters get into, and it gets super hyped up with, like, some initial ideas. Those ideas are too rough, or they aren't actually the best application of the technology, and you get the first public failures. You know, now the public thinks, like, oh, maybe this stuff is, maybe it's kind of whack, maybe it's not the future. Public interest dies down, but during that time, the people are still working on the technology and looking at different applications for it. And then, without anybody even really realizing it in the public, it just kind of ends up finding its niche, or finding, like, its correct application. So, like, there were these companies that were looking at doing drone deliveries, and it turns out, for all the above reasons, it didn't work out. It really didn't work out. And it was pretty much just, I mean, it turns out that, like, the customer doesn't really care how they get their package. It doesn't really matter if it's just a person who drops it off or a drone. I mean, half the time you aren't even home when it gets delivered. So it was just kind of a fool's errand to keep trying to invest into drone deliveries. But there was one company, and I think a couple of their, like, competitors sort of jumped into this as well. When they figured this out, they were like, hey, you know what is a good application of this? Medical supply drops to third world countries. So, like, in Africa or some places, or areas that don't have, like, quite as much, like, development, don't have a lot of infrastructure. They have medicine, but one of the problems with, like, more remote areas is that sometimes important medicines actually have expiration dates, and they can go bad. And these places, some of these more like, remote communities, can actually end up with situations where they have the medicine, but it's expired and they can't use it. So what these companies do is they deliver it to them via drone. It's like, oh, now they found their niche. They found the application of the technology. I feel like NFTs are probably going to have the same thing, and I think we're already seeing the downturn. Like Bitcoin was like an early example, which I think is probably, I think it's some kind of virtual currency is probably going to be in our future. In all likelihood, some kind of decentralized thing, or I don't know if it's decentralized, but it's going to be there. It's the technology, even for like banking. Even if you're just talking about like regular old U.S. dollars or Mexicano pesos, or what have you, existing currencies, hard currencies, just for security reasons, for banking. There's probably applications for there. But right now, the idea of like, oh, you can buy this JPEG of a lion, and you have this. Jesus Christ. Ugh. It's so gross. You can buy, well, you're not technically buying the JPEG for the lion, you're buying the NFT, which is the certificate of ownership that you own the lion, that you own this file of a lion that no one gives a fuck about, and that it's going to have a lot of value in the future. Maybe. Probably. The .com bubble? I haven't heard of that. Comic book speculation? I haven't heard of that. Oh, I have heard of that. Well, those never ended up poorly for anyone. It's not like most people went bankrupt who tried to get in those games. Yeah, and I feel like everyone's seen the stories about how interest in NFTs and the metaverse, which is just a marketing thing. The metaverse isn't real. There's the Facebook metaverse, or as I like to call it, the Zuckerverse, which is just shitty VR chat. And that's actually like the name that they stole. Metaverse was just a term they stole that wasn't copyrighted yet. But metaverse as a concept, not as, the Zuckerverse, it's just a marketing thing. It's just, metaverse is just so companies can get you into their content ecosystems, so you just give them more money. What if everything was an ad? That Futurama clip about ads in your dreams. Anyway, so yeah, I think we're seeing that, like, the falling interest in the metaverse and these, just these things. The hype has died down. A couple internet tech, Silicon Valley tech bros are not, like, it's not enough to sustain it. A couple people are probably going to go bankrupt, and then it's going to be quiet, and then in like 5 years, you're going to be part of your purchasing of a concert ticket when we're maskless, hopefully, I fucking hope, is going to be you're purchasing an NFT for the ticket. And then you're going to get there and you're going to show them a QR code. So, yeah, and then it's going to be kind of cool. And it's not going to become the wrecking ball that changes everything about our lives. It's just going to find its use, and it will slowly integrate in a way that people are fine with, and that isn't incredibly disruptive. Silicon Valley disruptive. Yeah. I don't know why there was so much block shits at the conference. It might have honestly been that, like, they were hurting for cash and they needed the investors. I really hope that next year it's not the same, because it was really weird and slimy feeling. And it feels gross knowing that, like, just statistically, there's probably at least, like, one person who's going to, like, invest into one of these things and lose a lot of money. They're gonna, like, their first contact with it was from this conference. That was kind of like, maybe that isn't gonna happen, but statistically, I feel like there's gonna be at least one person. Like, this is the beginning of the domino chain that leads to their bankruptcy and their kids can't go to college. something like that. Yeah. And again, nobody likes it. There's like some more specific stories and like anecdotes I could say, but I won't, just because I don't know. I don't want it to be identifiable to anyone, but yeah, if we were talking like off the record, I could probably mention, yeah, like there's specific companies I heard about where it did not go over well with like anyone. Like anyone. And so yeah, let me talk about something cool. So I didn't get to see any talks the first day, although it wasn't like a super big deal because I know they're going to be on YouTube anyway. There were two that I was sort of interested in. There was like, it was like how to stop your team from destroying your game, which sounds like an interesting talk about like management and stuff like that. And then there was another one called like everything I learned about community management I learned from Neopets. I definitely want to check that one out when it gets uploaded. But there was a talk that I got to see on day 2. It was, what's her name? Sarah Stern, I think, who is from the 343 Studios, like, multiplayer team. But I think basically, she was on the team that developed the AI bots for Halo Infinite's multiplayer. They were the ones that were killing everyone when the multiplayer first dropped. And it was just about how they went about doing them, how they went about programming them and developing them, and it was actually really neat, really cool talk. Basically what they did is the first thing that they kind of like identified was, you know, what is the purpose of the bots, or why are we even having bots in the first place, because this is the first Halo with multiplayer bots. And their reasoning was that, so she was someone who joined around like, I think she said she started out with Halo 5's like upkeep, so basically Halo 5's content drip. And she had some experience. She had like a decent amount of experience. She'd played like the campaigns of the previous Halo games, but she hadn't really played much multiplayer. And she realized that it's very different, and the skills that you learn in single player aren't like a one-to-one translation to multiplayer. So she kind of like spent a few years improving and getting better at Halo multiplayer. And she kind of like used, and a lot of other people had her same experience, and they kind of used that as like a backdrop to be like, okay, well, it's really like discouraging when you go online and you just get totally stomped by someone else who's got way more experience than you. Even if it's just like they're, let's say, one tier above you in skill. And what they did is they essentially, they broke down, this is a very like simplification as she described it, but they basically broke it down into 4 levels of Halo skill, as they called it. Where level 1 is like the complete newbie, never really played a Halo game before, doesn't really have much experience with FPSs, maybe is just, new to using a controller and doesn't know about Halo. Because it is a very specific type of FPS multiplayer like experience. So they broke it down in like, and then level 4, it climbs into level 4 is like your advanced player, like the high level player who's playing competitively. Maybe could enter a tournament if they wanted to, for instance. So what they did was they basically came up with like the bots in Halo Infinite's multiplayer were essentially meant to be like bridges between the skill levels. So if you're a level 1 player and you can, the level 1 bot is not a huge challenge, but just enough that if you're able to consistently win against it, you will have learned enough through improving and through your gameplay that if you can beat like the level 1 or level 0 bot, you can start challenging the level 2 players. And so, if you're a level 2 player and you can beat the next tier of bot, the level 2 bots, it basically like trains you up to, now you can start challenging level 3 players. So they're like these bridges between them that are meant to teach or basically serve as like tests or watermarks for how good at Halo you are, so to speak. And so the way they kind of went about doing this, figuring this out, was they broke down Halo multiplayer into a couple core, what they called Halo skills. And so that was things like, it's part of me. Oh, I just want this shit out of my system. That was like it was like strafing, aim, grenade usage, and like when to chase down or flee, basically. Fight or flight, you might say. And they looked at a ton of like real human gameplay across multiple skill levels, and they kind of noticed like, okay, what are the categories within these categories, the subcategories, right? Where people excel, where we see like the difference. So for like strafing, it's like, what kinds of strafing are there? There's like left, right, there's forward, backward, and then there's like jumping and crouching. So there's actually patterns that you can note with like how often do players mix up their strafing habits, right? And where higher level players incorporate very complex strafing patterns into their gameplay to be as unpredictable as possible, whereas a beginner player is basically just running right at you. Other things like aiming, which should be pretty obvious, but it's stuff like, they showed like gameplay from someone who had some experience with FPSs, but only on mouse and keyboard, and then they were given a controller, and they're just making these huge, these super wide turns of the camera. They're like way overcorrecting when the enemy moves in one direction. They're just veering way off to the side. And then you look at like, a more advanced player, and the differences that they start to see is like the general area that the crosshair is around the enemy, then like the specific distance between the crosshair and the opponent and how quickly that distance closes, and then whether or not the player is actually like leading their shots to where they think the enemy is going to be in the next moment. And other stuff like the grenade usage one was really funny, because it was like they noticed like, okay, once you get to like a certain like level 2, because like beginner players do not use grenades at all. They just don't use them. Because they're just trying to wrap their head around the rest of the game, and grenades are like this totally other thing that they don't want to worry about yet. Once you get to like level 2, they notice like, okay, common grenade behaviors are you start and end a fight with grenades. Like you see an enemy and you toss a grenade to either like soften them up or force them in a direction. Or to kind of gain control of the situation, basically, by putting a big splash of damage somewhere in the area. And then near the end of the fight, you might throw one to finish an enemy off. But then once they got to like slightly higher, like more advanced players, they noticed that there would be all of these grenades tossed in the interim, like during the actual skirmish, like the fight part, like the middle of the battle. That were mostly used to like control space. Essentially, they toss grenades to force opponents away from certain areas and into like bad positions and stuff like that. And so that was really difficult for them to overcome. Of like, how do we program a bot to be able to do that? And the solution was that they just didn't. And so they programmed in the beginning and ending a fight with the grenades, like those behaviors. The bot will like pick one to do depending on the situation. And then in the middle, they just kind of have it throw it every once in a while. Just kind of randomly. And apparently you can't even really discern the difference. So the difference isn't really that noticeable. The goal was more so just to have them do it enough that the human player playing against the bot would notice it. So they'd be like, oh, okay, the bots are doing this. This is like a common like tactic that they're using. Like maybe I should do that or something like that. Just to like get you acquainted with that kind of that Halo skill, so to speak. What else? Yeah. And the one that I thought was really fascinating actually was whether or not to like chase down an opponent to finish them off or back away. And when they talked to like players, like high level players, they basically had to talk to high level players about it because they were the only ones who were actually thinking actively about their decisions. And it basically came down to their read on the situation. So like, do I have shields? Do they have shields? What's my ammo like? Are there enemies around? And then that informed their decision to either chase them down or retreat and just, leave them be. And so what they did was really neat, was they basically programmed the bots to have like a confidence level. And depending on different factors, like whether or not the enemy, like whether or not, the player has shields or how much ammo the bot has or whether the bot has its shields up, they will retreat or aggress. And I think they actually programmed like some bots will like randomly have more aggression or like tend towards aggression, and others will tend towards being like more conservative and retreating. And then so like they took all these categories with these different scales, and they basically just like they kind of tuned it to roughly fit each skill level. So like for instance, for the aiming one, she showed like a debug version of like a third person like debug menu version of like what goes on, like what the bot sees. So essentially they have like a character moving around, and the bot has essentially a sphere. When they see a player, when they make line of sight, there's a sphere around them that they can see. And the sphere represents points that they can shoot at. So they can shoot at any point within the sphere. So the general behavior of that like sphere of potential aiming locations, the behavior is generally that as the player moves around, the sphere gets bigger, so you get less precise because they're moving more. And then if they stay still, the sphere gets like really small, to like basically just hugging their body. And then the rate at which so like the higher level bot, when the opponent is moving around, the size of the sphere is a lot tighter than the beginner level bot, where it's just huge and they can miss a ton of shots. They have a ton of like margin for error essentially. That was really neat. It was super cool. I'd recommend I think it was called like Deconstructing the Combat Dance by Sarah Stern, I think was her name. So that was really cool. I would recommend totally listening to the full one because I can't quite describe everything. But yeah, the way that she broke it down was super, super fascinating. It was just like, it wasn't too technical. I feel like a lot of the talks ended up breaking down into like one of three categories. And part of this might have been because according to what I heard, there was less talks this year than previous ones. Probably because less people showed up just because of the COVID travel and it's a pain in the butt. But generally broke down into like three categories that I noticed. Maybe I'm totally off, but one was really technical, like programming and like audio talks of like how to maximize efficiency of the map rendering on accelerated GPUs for 18 12 operate systems, and you're like, okay, you know, that's for a certain type of person, not me. The second category was stuff about diversity, so like representation of this group of people in the industry / in games, which, like, that's cool, you know, it's cool that it's there. Not the most interesting thing to me. I don't know, I just don't really feel like sitting down for like a 40-minute talk about how the Latinx community is doing in the games industry. And that is because I am racist. I'm intensely racist. You have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. It was just not really, didn't really catch my fancy. And then the third category was blockchain shit. It was all just block shits. And every single, did I say this? Every single blockchain talk was sponsored. Every single one. There was like one, I think, that was not sponsored, and it was like explicitly about like the pitfalls of blockchain development or something like that. Excuse me. I'm just trying to like force the burps out of my system, just because like I want it out. I also don't want that like gross taste on my tongue. Ugh. Yeah, I don't know. It was great. It was really chill. It was a lot of fun. I'd like to go back in the future. It was a good time. I don't know if I really have anything else to talk about. Considering GDC. If you guys have any questions about like my experience or something, then let me know. I should mention that if you just buy a GDC pass, probably not gonna be able to see any talks. So there's different like levels of access that they have. And my badge was just like an exhibitor badge, which basically just meant that I was allowed on the show floor, and I was able to go before opening, and I was able to stay after closing to, you know, for setup and shut down, essentially, with the exhibit, and nothing else. I was not allowed to go to any talks with that. You needed like an industry pass or a core pass or an all access pass. But we did have 3 people who had all access passes, and so what we did is we just badge switched. It was just like, hey, if you want to go to a talk, let us know, and we'll just do a quick badge switch, and then you come back, we'll just switch again. So yeah, if you do choose to go, it's probably going to be confined to the floor, and honestly, after like a day and maybe a day and a half, you're probably going to see like everything. And it's kind of like if you just want to network, that's sort of the thing. Or if you have friends in the industry, it could be cool. Also, a lot of people fly out, so there's people in the area and all that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to talk about. And I didn't really pay attention to any gaming news because I basically just came home and fell asleep. And then woke up and left for the train, basically. Let's see, let's just randomly pop in to r/games to see if we can find anything juicy to cap us off. Oh, the source code to Wipeout by Psygnosis has just been released. Okay. That's kind of cool. Anyway. Yeah. Hey, Far Cry 6 is free to play this weekend. Jump in. I'm gonna be wrapping it up. Leave it. Leave any. Yeah. Bleh. If you've been watching so far, thank you for watching or listening. I don't know what you would call it. Still don't know what you'd call it with this. Thank you for staying with me thus far. If you have a question, leave it in the comments below, and I'll definitely get to it next time, but it has to be phrased in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I'm going to try and get a video out by Thursday, maybe? I don't know. It kind of works out a little awkwardly, because the end, I wanted to get another... fuck. Should have gotten a video out last week, but I was all busy. It'll work out. You know, 2 videos a month, baby. 2 videos a month. Yeah, Die Hard Part 4, and just to be clear, in all likelihood, it's going to Part 5. It's gonna go all the way to 5 parts, and then we're gonna take a little break, and we're gonna do some other stuff. So, yeah, look forward to that. Check out all the games and the people that I shout out in the description. Check out that Hermit Crab game. I guess check out that game with the weed. If you were that medievalist guy I talked to for like 2 hours about Horizon Zero Dawn, talk to me down below. I don't fucking know. Yeah, subscribe to the channel. Fucking whatever, you know. Bye.